Resuming debate, the Leader of the Opposition.
I will be splitting my time with the Honourable Member for Parry Sound, Muskoka. Mr. Speaker, what we have today with the Prime Minister's housing crisis is double trouble. Since the Prime Minister took office and since he promised to make housing affordable, the average cost of a mortgage payment has doubled from $1,400 a year to over $3,000 a year. The average cost of rent in Canada's 10 biggest cities has doubled from about $1,100 to over $2,000 every single year. And the average required minimum down payment for a house in Canada has doubled from $22,000 to $45,000, all since the Prime Minister became Prime Minister and promised that he was going to make housing affordable. This is not just an inconvenience. This is not just a case where politicians stand up and say Canadians are having trouble making ends meet or putting food on the table, as politicians always like to say. This is becoming possibly the single biggest socioeconomic crisis in my lifetime, as an entire generation of young people have come to the acceptance for the first time in Canadian history that they will not be able to afford a home. Let me share with you the mathematics of hopelessness. I was speaking to a young lady, 28 years old, a CATSA screener at Toronto Pearson Airport. She calculates that at the current rate of savings, about $5,000 a year, it will take her somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 years to save for a down payment in Toronto. That means she will be well over 40 and unable to have kids. The hopelessness is not that she can't afford a home, it's that her calculator tells her she will never be able to afford a home. Now, it would be nice and comforting for the Prime Minister if he could claim that this problem is out of his hands. It's the result of some crazy global phenomenon that is not in his grasp, and therefore he is once again just a passive observer in the misery that the Canadian people are living, as he so often tries to portray himself. But the stats prove otherwise. This problem does not exist in the vast majority of countries in our peer group around the world. For example, last year, Fortune magazine concluded that the standard home in Canada now costs twice as much as it does in the US. Explain this. The United States prices are determined by supply and demand. They have 10 times the demand in the United States because they have 10 times the population. And they have a smaller supply because their land mass is more confined and less than ours. So they have 10 times the demand and less supply, and yet, according to Forbes magazine, the prices are half there as they are here in Canada. Around the world, we see other examples. For example, Vancouver in NDP, British Columbia, is now the third most overpriced housing market in the world, according to Demographia. Toronto is the 10th. Both are more unaffordable than Manhattan, Los Angeles, London, and even Singapore, an island, for God's sakes, where they have literally nowhere left to build. All places with more money, more people, and less land, and yes, yet their real estate is more affordable than ours. The practical consequences of this are that, for example, almost 1/3 of homeowners with a mortgage will pay off that debt over more than a 30-year period due to higher interest rates, a significant increase over the once standard 25-year amortization. The average rent for a spare bedroom, just the bedroom, not the overall housing unit, in a home, condo, or apartment in Vancouver was $1,410. Put this into perspective. There are now couples that consider it a bargain to move into a townhouse with two other couples, each of them renting a single room, often sharing a bathroom, always sharing a kitchen, and paying $1,500 a month just for that room. Here in Canada, this is true housing poverty, and it has happened after 8 years of this Prime Minister's policies. Why is housing so unaffordable? One, government deficits are driving up interest and therefore mortgage rates on people with debt. But two, we have the fewest houses per capita in the G7, even though we have the most land to build on. Why? The answer is government gatekeepers block housing construction. It takes up to 10 years to get a building permit. We rank 64th in the in the world for building permit delays. We rank second last for speed of building permits within the OECD. Every other country but one in that group of countries is faster to deliver a permit and therefore to allow houses to be built. This, Madam Speaker, blocks construction and prevents Canadians from owning a house. We know that this problem is worse in NDP-controlled British Columbia, where hard-left woke mayors who stand up for the wealthy mansion owners in leafy, ritzy neighborhoods block the poor, the immigrants, and the working class from ever owning homes. And therefore, we don't have enough homes, and that is why Canadians don't have a place to live. Now, the government wants to bring in 500,000 people per year, 2 million people over the next 2 years, and they have no plan to build the houses to go along with it. In fact, since this Prime Minister took office, we actually have fewer houses per capita than we did in the 8 years ago. So less houses per capita than before. In other words, this problem is metastasizing and worsening every single day. The only party with a common sense plan to fix it is the Conservative Party. And this is the plan. The government has put $89 billion into housing programs. Government housing is not the solution. It is not working because if you have a confined space of permitted land to build on, you can pour as much money you want into that space. You're not going to get more housing. You're going to get more expensive housing. Worse still, the Prime Minister has actually announced $4 billion more, not for housing, but for the gatekeepers. The money is literally going to go to the zoning and permitting departments of the big cities that are blocking the construction in the first place. In other words, a big fat reward for those same bureaucrats that are blocking our youth from having homes. That will build out the bureaucracy and slow down the construction. So here's my common sense plan. We will link the number of dollars big cities get for infrastructure to the number of houses that actually get built. Those that block construction will be fined. I will cut back their infrastructure. Those that speed up and lower the cost of permits to build more will get a building bonus from my government because incentives work. I'll require every federally funded transit station have high-density housing on all the available land around and even on top of the station. We will sell off 6,000 federal buildings to convert them into affordable housing for our young people to live in. We will speed up immigration for building trades. We will shift more of our education dollars over to the trades rather than just the white-collar professions. And we've seen the way. Look at what the Squamish have done in the city of Vancouver. They have their own land and don't have to follow the rules of the gatekeepers. They're building 6,000 units of housing on 10 acres of land. The Squamish have shown what can happen when you get the gatekeepers out of the way, and that is what exactly we are going to do right across the country. We will clear the gatekeepers. We will remove the privileged class that is inside the castle walls, and we will open up the gates of opportunity to anyone who's prepared to work hard. If you work hard in this country, the rule should be, the deal should allow that you should have a decent home where you can start a family and raise kids. It's common sense, the common sense of the common people, united for our common home. Your home, my home, our home. Let's bring it home. Thank you.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, Madam Speaker, you know, when the leader of the Conservative Party sat around the cabinet table, the Harper government did absolutely nothing when it came to housing. Contrast that to this current government where we have invested literally billions and billions into housing, developed a housing strategy, working with the different provinces and the many different stakeholders, both profit and non-profit. And my question to the Leader of the Official Opposition is that would he not recognize that even though Ottawa has stepped up to the plate and contributed in virtually every way, even though the Conservative Party has opposed many of those proposals, that the provinces, municipalities, and other stakeholders also need to step up in order to resolve Canada's housing issues?
I want to remind members that I know that the Leader of the Official Opposition is very well capable of answering the question, and he doesn't need to hear from his MPs to help him out on this. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Well, first of all, it would have been better if that government had done nothing, because nothing would have been better than what they did in reality. You want to compare records? When I was the responsible housing minister, housing costs were half of what they are today. The average mortgage payment required on the average house was $1,400. Now it's $3,000. The required amount of a person's paycheck to make monthly payments on a house was 39%. Now it's 70%. The average rent was $1,100. Now it's $2,200. The average down payment was a modest $22,000. Now it's $45,000. And these are just results. Now, it is true, the Liberals have far more expensive housing programs, but that's a double loss. It means that not only are home buyers paying more, now taxpayers are paying more. Under Conservatives, both of them will pay less.
The Honourable